In the final years of his life, Carl Jung continued to exchange letters with people from very different paths. One of them was a Buddhist monk living in Bodh Gaya, a monastery town in northern India, built around the site where the Buddha is said to have awakened under the Bodhi tree. Jung shared with him pages from a manuscript he believed might be his final attempt to speak clearly about the human mind. What follows is part of the monk's reply. It was written in December of 1959, not as a lesson, not as a debate, but as a quiet reflection between two men who had spent their lives observing the same human struggle from different directions. If you value this kind of reflection, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future conversations like this one. This is that letter.
Bodh Gaya, India, December 1959. Dear Carl Jung, I read the pages you sent me with attention and also with a kind of caution. Not caution toward you, but toward my own habits of mind. When a person reads a manuscript like this, the mind wants to do what it always does, to collect ideas, form opinions, and feel finished. But your pages do not invite that kind of reading. They invite something slower. You write about the shadow as something formed by what the mind refuses to face. In Buddhism, we begin from the same observation, though we use different words. We say suffering grows wherever awareness is absent. As I moved through your manuscript, I felt how close your description is to what we see in practice. You do not treat the shadow as a flaw that should be removed. You speak of it as a consequence, the natural result of turning away, again and again, from what is uncomfortable. This is familiar to us. Here, the mind does not suffer because it is broken. It suffers because it resists seeing itself clearly. Many people do not understand this. They believe they suffer because their life is difficult. But when they sit in silence, it becomes obvious that much suffering comes from what they will not look at. I also noticed something different in your tone. In your earlier writings, there was a strong wish to map and explain, to make the hidden visible by structure. In these pages, I feel less urgency to persuade, less need to prove a point. Instead, there is patience. It feels like the voice of someone who has watched the mind long enough to know that certain things do not yield to force. Some truths do not appear because we push for them. They appear because we stop pushing and remain present long enough. Life in Bodh Gaya is simple. We wake before sunrise. We sit, we walk, we eat what is offered. And because there is little distraction, the mind becomes visible to itself. Throughout the day, I watch the same movement repeat, the mind reaching for comfort and turning away from what unsettles it. A person may think he came here to learn calm. Often, the first lesson is not calm at all. It is honesty. Silence removes the cover. What was hidden steps forward. This is why your pages felt at home here. I did not read them as a system to master. I read them inside the monastery's rhythm, and the words kept meeting the same reality I see each day. People come here imagining practice is a cleansing. They hope silence will wash away anger, fear, shame, desire. What happens instead is quieter and more demanding. These things follow them into silence. When work, status, and daily distraction fall away, what was avoided is finally close enough to be felt. This is not darkness appearing. It is darkness being revealed. Your reflections on symbols held my attention for a long time. You write that symbols are not decorations of thought, but natural expressions of what the conscious mind cannot yet hold directly. I think this is one of the most useful things you offer the reader, not because it provides answers, but because it protects the reader from a common mistake. The mistake of believing that explanation is the same as transformation. Many people want a symbol to be like a label. They want to name it and feel finished. But a living symbol is not finished. It is like a seed. It works over time. I have met visitors who collect spiritual images the way others collect achievements. They speak of a dream, a vision, a strange coincidence, and they shine with pride. But their daily life remains unchanged. The same anger, the same hunger for praise, the same fear of loss. They have not been changed by the symbol. They have only held it. In Buddhist practice, we are warned about this. A deep experience can become another attachment. Even insight can become a possession. So we train in a simple way. See what arises. Do not cling. Do not push away. Images arise in the mind. Memories arise. Old scenes return. Feelings that were never fully felt come back into the body. The practice is not to interpret too quickly. The practice is to remain present and not run. When you describe symbols as expressions of what cannot yet be held directly, I hear a similar warning. Do not reduce what is alive into something small. Do not replace contact with explanation. Your manuscript also speaks of dreams in a way that feels very close to what we observe. You say the dream is a natural language of what lies beneath the surface mind. Here is an observation from our side. What you meet at night in dreams, we often meet fully awake, sitting still. In dreams, the ego sleeps. In meditation, the ego does not sleep, but it becomes cornered. It cannot distract itself as easily. It cannot negotiate with noise. Then the same figures appear: fear, desire, pride, grief, longing, shame. Sometimes they come as images, sometimes as sensations, sometimes as a single sentence that repeats like a drumbeat. A person who has never sat still thinks these things will destroy him. A person who has practiced learns something simple. They rise, they remain, and they pass. They lose power when they are seen without resistance. This is where your work and our work meet very closely. Different languages, different methods, but the same human meeting. You approach through meaning, through careful attention to the messages carried by inner images. We approach through direct seeing, through the steady training of non-avoidance. The difference matters, but it is not a contradiction. It is two hands touching the same stone from different sides. When you describe the shadow as something shaped through neglect, not choice, I felt immediate recognition. In Buddhism, we say suffering grows wherever awareness is absent. Not because a person is bad, but because something human has been avoided for too long. Over time, this avoidance hardens. What is not seen does not disappear. This is why your warning about age feels so true. You suggest that if the shadow is not met earlier in life, it does not weaken with age, it becomes rigid. I have seen this often. Older men arrive here disciplined and respected. They have lived by duty. They have carried responsibility. They have been praised for control. Yet when the body weakens and the roles they carried no longer protect them, what remains asks for attention with great force. This does not appear as madness most of the time. It appears as rigidity, as moral certainty, as the need to be right, as fear of silence. Sometimes it appears as bitterness, a quiet anger toward life itself, and sometimes it appears as despair. Not dramatic despair, but a dull heaviness that says, it is too late. When such a man sits down, he realizes he has spent decades running from his own mind, and now he is tired. He can no longer run the same way. What you describe in the shadow is not only a psychological idea, it is the lived cost of avoidance. There is another point in your manuscript that I found important. You do not treat the shadow as something separate from the person, as if it were an enemy. You seem to suggest that the shadow is part of the human wholeness. Not wholeness as perfection, but wholeness as honesty. This matters to us, too. In Buddhism, people often misunderstand the path. They think it is a path of becoming pure, becoming above ordinary life. But real practice does not make a person above human nature. It makes a person intimate with human nature. When the mind stops pretending, it becomes workable. When the mind keeps pretending, it grows heavy. Your manuscript also carries something I would call a mature humility. Earlier in life, a person believes wisdom means solving every inner conflict. He believes the goal is completion. In these pages, I feel less certainty that everything can be resolved. There is a recognition that some tensions remain, even after a life of inquiry. This does not feel like failure, it feels like honesty. In Buddhism, we speak early of impermanence, not to frighten the mind, but to loosen its grip. When one truly sees that everything changes, the need to defend an image of who one is begins to fade. Reading your manuscript, I felt you are writing from a similar understanding. Less effort to perfect the self, more willingness to remain with what cannot be completed. This is where age becomes a teacher. The body weakens, and the mind loses its favorite escapes. The senses change, and pleasure does not distract in the same way. Memory becomes less reliable, and the mind cannot build the same stories with the same confidence. What remains becomes louder. Fear of loss, fear of death, regret, old guilt, old pride. Some people meet this with panic. They try to rebuild control. They try to force certainty. Others meet it with a new kind of softness. They stop demanding that life be clean and complete. They stop demanding that the self be admired. They begin to live closer to truth. Your manuscript seems to speak to this moment. It feels shaped by time. Not only the time of an individual life, but the time it takes for a mind to become honest. A young man wants solutions. An older man, if he is fortunate, wants clarity. Clarity is simpler than solutions. It does not always remove pain. It removes confusion. And in a strange way, that is enough. There is also something else your pages bring forward, something that is easy to miss if one reads too quickly. You hint that the shadow is not only personal, it is also shared. In this monastery, different visitors arrive from different countries, different classes, different beliefs, but their minds repeat the same patterns. The desire to be praised, the fear of being ordinary, the need to blame someone, the hunger for certainty. They think their struggle is unique. It is not. When people do not see this, they become cruel without noticing. They protect their image of themselves by attacking others. They call it virtue, but it is fear. Buddhism speaks of ignorance not as stupidity, but as not seeing our own mind, not seeing how we create suffering, not seeing how quickly we turn away from discomfort. When many people share the same not seeing, it becomes a kind of fog in the world. Your work, especially here, seems to be pointing to this, that the shadow can grow in a whole culture when people refuse honest self-knowledge. This is not a political statement. It is a human one. At this point, I want to offer a small disagreement, a friendly one, because I respect your work enough to speak plainly. When you speak of integration and wholeness, I understand what you mean. I see the necessity of meeting what is hidden, and I agree that denial is dangerous. But from the Buddhist side, there is a risk that I feel compelled to name. Some people hear the language of wholeness, and they strengthen the self even more. They begin to build a more complex identity. I am integrated. I am whole. I have faced my shadow. The mind is clever. It can turn even honesty into pride. In our practice, we watch for this closely. We do not only face what is hidden, we also watch the desire to become someone who has faced it. You might say this is still part of the shadow, and perhaps it is, but the method matters. When the goal becomes a better self, the mind can tighten around that goal. It can begin to protect it the way it protects any identity. In Buddhism, we aim not only to know the self more deeply, but to loosen the grip around the idea of self itself. This is where our paths may differ. You help a person become more complete as a person. We help a person see that the person is not as solid as he believed. Yet even here, I do not feel opposition. I feel two medicines for two kinds of suffering. Some people need to meet what they denied. Some people need to stop clinging to the one who is meeting it. Both require courage, and perhaps, in the end, both require the same thing: the ability to stay present without running. When the shadow is seen clearly, something unexpected happens. The mind becomes less harsh. Judgment softens. Cruelty loses its certainty. In Buddhism, we call this compassion, not as a virtue to display, but as a natural result of seeing clearly. When the self loosens, the need to defend it loosens too. And when defense relaxes, kindness becomes possible. If these pages you sent me are indeed among your final offerings, I believe their value lies here, not in giving the reader neat answers, but in bringing the reader to the edge of what cannot be escaped. Not to frighten him, but to make him honest. Not to make him perfect, but to make him present. Analysis and meditation serve different temperaments. One looks through meaning, the other rests in direct seeing. Yet both meet at the same point, when a person can no longer escape himself and must decide whether to turn away once more or finally remain. Here, we bow not to answers, but to careful attention. I offer these reflections with respect, as recognition from another path, spoken quietly, without the wish to conclude. With sincere regards, your friend, Venerable Ananda, a monk in practice.
The letter ends there. Two men from two very different worlds, pointing to the same uncomfortable truth. What we refuse to face does not disappear. It waits. Jung called it the shadow. The monk spoke of it as absence of awareness, and the suffering that grows inside that absence. Different language, same human problem. And maybe that's the real message of this letter. The work isn't becoming perfect. The work is becoming honest. If this resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep exploring these ideas slowly and clearly in the next episodes. And I'd really like to hear from you. What's one thing you've been avoiding, not in the world but in yourself, that you know you need to face? Leave a comment. I read them.